Everybody, welcome to 112th week of weekly webinars. As we're getting ready for our Memorial Day weekend, we want to honor those who have fallen. We want to take time and remember. And part of that remembering, I think, think about this. March 17, 2020 was our first webinar. And, there were some crazy things that were going on. I mean, in the last 2 years, and I think it's worth thinking back on that. I had a conversation with Greg Sowers of City Compressor yesterday. And he said, you guys still doing those webinars? He goes, you guys really helped us out a lot. And I said, yeah, we're still doing them. He said, are you guys still talking about PPP? And I said, no, not much. But we're still talking about whatever is important to you as business owners and leaders in navigating through not only the challenges of the last 2 years, but also just the challenges of business in general. And we got challenges right now, supply chain, employees, price of gas and diesel. Oh, Jack, I like your background. Yeah, you just upped it in a massive way. So before we go any further, Jack, you got to say something so that we can celebrate your big American flag back.
That's right. See, I was hustling to try to get this just the right one. So I found it. And also I feel not obligated, but I called my father this morning. He was a Vietnam era vet in the Air Force, and asked him, and I know that he has this photo in his office at his house in Matthews. And I don't know if I'm going to turn off the background for a second so everybody can see this. Let's see, how am I going to turn off? I can turn it on, but I can't turn it off. Choose virtual background, none. All right, sorry for the interruption and flow, but
there you go.
Okay. So that is,
wow.
Obviously my father is the younger of the two. He's getting a service medal on his uniform by his commanding officer many, many decades ago, when he had hair on top of his head even. So I'm very proud of that.
I can see you. I can see a little bit of you in him.
Yeah. I'm definitely a mix between two parents, but yes. So
yeah, that's good.
Yep. Yeah, and he's one of those guys that, how they have at the Panthers game up, like it's probably around 104 or 105 a corner, and they have seats for servicemen and women. He always goes by there and shakes their hands on his way to his seats. And I told him, I said, maybe some Starbucks cards, and so he'll hand out Starbucks cards to them too. So very much proud of him, and he's very much proud of his country. So shout out to him.
That's good. So Bruce has already given you a shout out. He loved your virtual background, so turn it back on.
Okay.
It looks way better than your desk anyway.
I know. Messy desk too at that. All right.
Oh yeah, there you go. Now I'm feeling even more patriotic. I love it. All right, cool. Well, I'm sure you guys have some rants. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I'm just going to throw it your way. And then something that I'd like you guys to think about. And this is for you, our audience members, and we're a smaller crowd today, but hey, we're going into a long weekend, so no worries. Think about over the past couple of years, some of the stuff that you wondered how you were going to make it through it. And think about if there were moments in particular that are worth doing a shout out for somebody. To help you make it through it. May have been a podcast, may have been the Anything But Typical podcast. I don't know. I'm just plugging it. No, seriously, think about that. I think it's really powerful to do that. So anyway, Jack, Adam, the floor is yours. Anything you guys want to talk about?
Yeah. Only thing that I had for this week, that is a pretty cool picture. Jack, so Jack and I are pretty much the same age. My dad was also in Vietnam. So shout out to the veterans that served. And then my grandfathers were both in World War II. Wow. And then, my when I thought, oh, patriotic calling of the Boatsman family, I must serve in the military. My dad said no, and then I didn't find him very much on it. So I'm not a veteran, but have a lot of respect for those that do. Probably rightfully so. My dad said no, because chances are I probably would have gotten dishonorable discharge at some point, or would have been on KP duty for my entire life. Anyway, only rant that I've got is it's not really a rant. It's just more, I had the opportunity to sit in on a economic forecast presentation with FNB, so First National Bank. And, I think this, probably corroborates what a lot of other people, have seen out there in the market. But, basically, they've accelerated the interest rate forecast to kind of being a full point to a point and a half increase in 12 months instead of kind of over a couple year time period. So it's just all this stuff is kind of beyond my head, but you raise interest rates, that helps to reduce inflation and blah blah, and somehow we have to not go into a recession. And I don't know. I mean, I heard all that and blah, blah, blah. And what it made me really think about is that most of the economic forecasts, that I used to see prior to the pandemic, and then all kind of the data change, what's acknowledged in the economic forecast is that, recessions are cyclical and we're overdue for a cycle. So it just makes me think that, and it's funny because I also heard on the radio an article about, can you talk your way, they said we could talk our way into inflation. Can you also talk your way into a recession? So this is, so I will apologize in advance. Maybe I'm talking my way into a recession, but, it does to me make sense right now to, start looking at the balance sheet and, tighten things up and making things a little bit stronger than they might have otherwise been in the past. Or if it already is strong, just look to see how you're gonna keep it strong, because it just there's a chance, who knows what's going to happen, but there is a chance that there is going to be a downturn, or credit's going to get a lot more expensive, so your appetite to borrow is going to be a little bit less, which just means you got to be tighter with your cash. So it's just some thoughts that now would be the time, if you haven't already done so, to start thinking about how do I make sure that I'm healthy? If I haven't taken the time to set a working capital target, or that's not something that I'm monitoring, maybe now's the time to do that, try to get my balance sheet dialed in. If I'm otherwise known that said, I don't know what a balance sheet is, maybe it's time to learn, because that's the important instrument during a recession, not the P&L. So that's my tirade. On tax rates, hard to say if you could glean any outcome from the primaries, on that front. So I'm not really revising anything in my prediction on taxes, other than to say likelihood of a rate change, pretty freaking low. So, if I'm picking fears, I'm going to pick the fear of recession and interest rate increases. That to me is going to trump my tax rate increase fear. So if you got to pick something to be fearful about, be fearful about that, not the not tax rate increases.
All right. So I don't have any tirades necessarily, but more kind of reporting out on a couple of things that we've been talking about over the course of time. So on the SBA EIDL program. So they read an article, and I printed out that the SBA won't need to transfer money to fund remaining loans, which sounds great, except if you weren't already accepted before May 6th. I think it was May 6th. And so if you were in and approved, you will either have received your money, or you will receive your money. But if you were not approved, then you were cut off. And there's another article that I read that talks about some of the rejections. And one of them, so a business owner was barred from government payments because he shared a name with a Nicaraguan national on the government's do not pay list. And so things like that happened. And by the time they figured it out, it was after May 6th. So they said, oh, sorry, you're not approved. So they put a line in the sand as far as either you're approved or not. On I think it was May 5th, they said, oh crap, we ran out of money. But then they said, okay, no, we didn't run out of money and we're going to be fine. And we don't have to pull money from somewhere else and go through reappropriations, et cetera. So if you were approved and you haven't received your money, good news, you're going to get your money. If you weren't approved, I'm sorry. Not my fault. Don't blame the messenger. Another interesting article that I read was, and we kind of all know this because we're experiencing this, but kind of the change in negotiating power as between employers and employees, and what we as employers have to do and offer in order to get good people in the door. And there are some companies that are going to unlimited vacations. And those are, I think Goldman Sachs was the example that was given. But what that means is that you don't have to keep track of your vacation, get your job done, get it done well, and then you can work from home. I mean, the reality is there's a lot of people working from home. Are they really putting in a full day like they might otherwise do in an office setting? So I think it's just kind of matching the reality that we're all facing. Some interesting numbers about, and these are employer insights, a poll that was taken, 43% of the people who responded, and it was an employer survey by Littler, which I think is an employment, a large national, international employment agency. 43% of respondents said they had been faced with requests that they only have vaccinated employees providing services. 70% experience that they would lose staff members if they implemented a fully vaccinated policy. And my understanding of what that actually means now is 2 shots and a booster, and in some cases getting that second booster, depending on the work. 65% of respondents said they planned to have implemented a return to office policy by the end of May. But the actual numbers are not that high. There's still a lot of pushback, although I will say, so my office is in Uptown Charlotte. I actually faced Trade and Tryon, and downstairs yesterday, trying to get some lunch from the local restaurant. Soup line was long, salad line was long. So I went to Starbucks and got one of those little protein packs. So people are back, but not everyone. I mean, it's not as crowded as it might otherwise be uptown. And then someone was asking me about the bipartisan infrastructure law and this is from the White House, so take it from that perspective. But just a quick summary of that is that billions of dollars that are going to be flowing outward from the government. And the introduction to this, and I'll kind of paraphrase a few things so it says the Biden administration has identified at least $700 million in dedicated funding across more than 65 federal technical assistance programs focused on helping communities apply for and deploy federal infrastructure funding. And then this is the first few pages of this guide that they published. And then they say 65 technical assistance resources and programs across federal governments. And then they also, okay, what do they mean by technical assistance? I thought this was interesting. Can mean different things to different people. So there's your warning that, okay, you may have a different feeling about where money should be spent. So we understand and appreciate that, but this is how we're going to spend your tax money. So for the purposes of the document, we're defining technical assistance programs as technical assistance as programs, processes, and resources that provide targeted support to community, region, organization, and other beneficiaries to help them access and deploy federal funding to deliver results. Again, another very specific nebulous definition, basically saying that we have money that we're going to help a bunch of people with a bunch of things. And then it does get into, so they have transportation, internet, water, power grid, environmental, and other things. So it goes into that. So if anyone is interested in seeing what the intended spend is on the Building a Better America plan, there is a guide out there for that. And then there's some statistics regarding franchise ownership by veterans. And actually I'll just say that I don't want to monopolize all the time, but just say that it's franchise veterans apparently are very good franchise owners, and franchisors like to have them as owners. And I think that's because of the regimented training that they have gone through. And so that goes into, and then not just in franchise business, but generally speaking, into having a mission and going through the mission and getting in and succeeding in the mission is how a lot of franchisors view veterans as prospect franchisees. So that was kind of very Cliff Clavin-ish of me this morning, but just throwing out a bunch of different things.
Man, Cliff Clavin, I haven't had that reference for a long time. I worked with the guy when I was at Bank of America, and I called him Cliff Clavin. He knew all the best places to eat and play, kind of off the wall places to go in San Francisco when we worked together. And he was from Boston. But he was like the walking encyclopedia of, useless trivia about San Francisco, which was really good. No, that's good. So another veterans deal, Till Valhalla. I love their t-shirts. So American since 1776. I like their t-shirts. I like supporting them. They do a lot to help and deal with fallen heroes, as well as deal with people that have been dealing with, PTSD, et cetera. So I love that. One thing, as you guys are thinking about this, first of all, it's good to see Greg Sowers on our list here. Like, dude, good to see you. One thing that if you don't use an operating system like EOS or scaling up or some sort of, even Sandler has a thing called organizational excellence, which is good too. But if you don't use something like that, I would highly encourage you to use that. One thing that we saw just as part of this whole remembering theme, those who were part of roundtables, peer-to-peer roundtables, or they had operating systems like what we use with EOS, et cetera, they seem to do better during the jolt and the pivot moments that COVID and the lockdowns kind of thrust upon all of our clients. It was like you could see it in our client base. And so I would encourage you guys to, if you're not doing something like that, I'd really encourage you to not be isolated. And anybody that's on here, you're not, you're seeking out wisdom and frivolity as well. But one of the things that we love doing, and there's something really powerful about doing that, is whenever we do our L10 meetings, it's a level 10 meeting, that's EOS language, but you start out with a segue, and it's usually something that is positive and it's a remembrance of something, it's honoring of something. And there's something magical about that when you kind of focus your efforts and your attention on stuff to remember something that was positive. And it doesn't mean that you're just, Pollyanna about things and you're putting your head in the sand of real issues. It's just, what are we going to focus on? We still have to focus on the challenges, but I encourage you to do that. Use Memorial Day weekend as a moment. Besides hot dogs and hamburgers, that's all great, but to really get intentional about that, because there's a lot to be thankful for when I think about it. All of you guys that are still on here, we've seen a lot of growth with our clients. We've seen, I'm not a huge government spending guy, but I'm grateful for a lot of those programs that we've got mutual clients of Jack's and ours that would have gone bankrupt without some of those programs. So yeah, there's been waste and all that kind of stuff. There will always be nefarious people that take advantage of the system, but I'm grateful for those things. Any questions from the gallery? I mean, you guys have to have something. I mean, you've got the brain trust of Adam Boatsman and Jack Santaniello. Come on.
I mean, I would have said the brain trust of Jack, and then I'm just here. But otherwise,
We know better.
Yeah,
We know better.
That's why we're both on here. Between the two of us, it's like maybe one good person.
I was gonna say we both can't be crazy or stupid on the same day. Hey, Normie. It's my best Cliff Clavin. It's not very good.
But do you remember the moment that you were watching Cars and you recognized the voice and you're like, oh,
that one, toys, all the above. It's good stuff. Very good stuff.
So when you think back to 2 years ago, what we were dealing with, especially back in March, I mean, by May, things seemed to be doing a little bit better, but March was freak out time. Any thoughts, any people that you guys can think of that made a difference? Any conversations that you thought were noteworthy?
I think that, so a couple thoughts on that. I think that the businesses, and we've said this before, the businesses that were able to be creative, and I try to use this word sparingly over the past 2 years, pivot, because we hear that so much. You got to pivot or else. But the ones that were able to adapt. And so, for example, a client who was on the verge of using an app for mobile ordering, and then was able to utilize that and move forward and continue their business. And this is a franchisor, so on behalf of the franchisees, so was able to help a large group of business owners on a larger scale. But I think the individual business owners who were able to do those things, and I think that technology has been and will continue to be a huge game changer. I mean, the evolution of the technology in my firm, and it's one of those things where you have management who is pushing back like they should, being good stewards of the firm finances, saying, well, do we really need that? Or is that just kind of the new shiny thing that everybody wants? And so, and we make our IT people go through the paces and explain to us why, yes, this is a fantastic program, but how is it going to benefit us as a business? And have you thought about how lawyers are going to use it? So that's the other thing too, is you can have great stuff, but if it isn't integrated into your business and into your culture, and I'll give you another example in why culture is important in technology, because a lot of times technology causes a culture shift. So our billing system, you can access it on computers, on iOS devices. And then if you mix voice recognition with that, so, I can, on my phone, when there's a lull in whatever athletic event I'm at, right? I'm sitting there in the corner talking into my phone, doing my timesheets, which then goes into the system. Whereas before I'd have to do it on paper. It had to be transcribed. I'd have to check it. And then you have, I don't know if it's necessarily artificial intelligence, but now it will suggest things and it'll tell me, okay, you're talking about this, it's probably for this client, so it kind of knows, but it's kind of scary at the same time, that it's predicting what I'm going to say. And so something's going on in the background with that. But so I think those are the things that are game changers and will continue to be. And I think that we'll see more of that, because shifting to kind of the psychological aspects of the past 2 years, that you have business owners that may have been considering or already in the process of some sort of succession planning, and the brakes got put on for whatever reason. It could be that there was something going on with the business, with the family. It could be that the value of the company plummeted because of there being reduced business, reduced revenue. So the person wasn't ready to sell at that time. I've also seen, and I know you guys have seen this, all of you have seen the psychological effect of your own mortality. And hey, yeah, I think I want to go hang out with my grandkids. I want to go hang out with my kids a little bit more, and whatever it may be, that has caused you to do certain things. So we're seeing a lot of transfers of ownership happening. We're seeing minority owners of businesses getting out and saying, okay, I'd like to be cashed out so I can do other things. I was okay with you using my money, and thank you for the growth, hopefully that it grew, but I'd like to cash out now and go do other things. So we're seeing a lot of that as well. And I think all of those things have been accelerated over the past 2 years. I think it came to a screeching halt, as you said in the very beginning. It is taking its time building back up to where it is, but the people that are around me in my office and elsewhere are just busy. And it's not just busy work, it is doing core M&A transactions and other things. So those are just some of my observations.
Okay, Bruce, you've been active today. That's great. I love it. Commercial property owners who scale down some standard charges for maintenance, cleaning, utility service to the individuals and businesses when leased facilities were not occupied. Owners had every legal right to continue the fees at the contractual level, but made adjustments to lower the burden. Of course, they also were trying to ensure the future that they would retain the tenant, but the impact still benefited the tenant. Very true.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment in that. So I saw that particular issue go in different directions depending on the landlord and the tenant. The more successful, the more successful path for tenants and landlords was to do exactly that, which was to give concessions in one form or another, and not just in the form of a temporary abatement or don't pay us, but then we'll add on a fraction of that later on down the road, but a true forgiveness of the debt that's owed, whether it's core rental fees or CAM or whatever it may be. I mean, the reality is that you're paying CAM for stuff and no one's using the parking lot, then okay, maybe it's justifiable to do that, and you just don't have people in there. There were other landlords that went in a different direction and very hardline about it. It's like, well, hey, I heard you may have gotten some PPP money, and some of that was supposed to be allocated to rent, so give me all of that. I did use that as a tool, quite candidly, and say, okay, the monies that were not allocated to payroll that were that we asked for because we wanted to cover some of the rent and other stuff, we'll give you that money. But don't ask us to pay full rent when under the circumstances where we just don't have any revenue. And so landlords had a choice. They either could roll with it and be understanding and humanitarian, if you want to call it that, or it's a business, and that it's the way it is, and we're going to send a default notice. We may not exercise our rights, but we have to go through this process in order to make sure at the end of the day that we find out that you had money, that we can go and get it, kind of thing. So Bruce's comment is very true in many cases, that there were concessions made, and now those landlords are seeing the benefit of making those concessions, which is as business picks back up. So, for example, downstairs at the shop, the sandwich shop downstairs, I was hanging out with the employees and the owner, who I got to know over the past 18 months because we would have conversations, and and then yesterday I saw him scrambling, helping out, and the lines were out the door. And so, I don't know what concessions may have been made with our mutual landlord in this building. I don't even know if we receive concessions or not. But those businesses, on the retail level downstairs in Overstreet Mall, I think many of them did receive some concessions, and now the lights are back on, and now they have people coming back. So it's just kind of getting through it, and it took longer than anybody would have ever thought it would take. And then there's also the other side. There's always 5-10 sides of everything, but the landlords have responsibilities to, if they have a mortgage on the building, they also needed to get concessions from their lenders on the mortgage for the building or wherever it is. So, I can't blame all landlords that were adamant in that. I don't know what was going on in their background. If they had their own lenders that are saying, you got to pay, you got to pay, you got to pay. Because I know there were some situations that were like that. And so it trickled down all the way down to the tenant that you got to pay because I have to pay, kind of thing. So, but yeah, true statements.
So you bring up some things that make me think about Zoom. I mean, look at this. We're doing this via Zoom. It's changed our business, quite frankly. And we use Microsoft Teams internally a lot. But I remember in April 2020, I get this email or as a LinkedIn message from a guy in Florida at 11:15 at night. And he said, I've been reading your stuff on LinkedIn and I've been attending some of your webinars. Would you ever consider taking on a new client in Tampa? Well, no, we never would before this. We never did. It's like, nah, if we can't drive there, if it's more than an hour, no. Well, we've got now clients in Los Angeles, and as much as I love crazy shirts, I think that the 6-hour time difference between us and Honolulu, or 5 hours when it's not daylight savings time, could be a little rough. But it's opened up possibilities for us. And ironically, I heard earlier this week on a business news network that I like listening to, the business news, Zoom, their stock is just like plummeting because, one, they're not profitable, which I hope they do get because I like the technology. But the meteoric rise when everybody is in lockdown was a false sense of future. I mean, it was an aberration. It wasn't going to be a sustainable move, much like what was happening in the .com era, back in, and I remember it quite well. Running a .com. It's like, at some point, you've got to have fundamentals that work. There are aberrations, but if there are not fundamentals, it's going to come back and haunt you. And so, you even bring up some really important things, Jack, like treat people with respect, show that you care and really do. That kind of stuff is especially wanting today. It seems like, man, the one thing bad about this whole last 2 years is it's just the polarization, the whole, walking on, everybody's just hypersensitive. It seems like it's like, man, we need some additional kindness. We need some additional empathy and just be human. We don't have to agree with each other on everything. We won't. If you're married, I mean, gosh, we hit 39 years this summer of being married. I guarantee you, we don't agree on everything. There are plenty of things that we don't, but love can still prevail. So anyway, that's enough of that kumbaya.
Is that why there's a cot in the background of your office? That
Is what?
There's a cot in the background of your office. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. That's right.
Now, and yet the other thing too is that I think that the video conversations, the live conversations, help with sincere discussions and sincere negotiations. A lot of times, and we're all guilty of this. We get an email and you're like, oh my God, what a jackass. I mean, just what is going on in that person's world that they would write an email like that? And the thing is that, okay, you can take the same words and a different mentality and perspective and be like, okay, I get it. I understand that, without having to give them an excuse that, okay, they're having a bad day. It's like, no, it's the way we interpret the words. When you're having a live conversation and you can see, and unless you're a really good actor and you can BS your way, and a lot of people can do that, but you can kind of, and I had this before too. It's like, okay, I welcome discussions with opposing counsel via video, because we can have, I can tell them, look, I'm really not trying to be hard nosed about this, but these are the reasons why, and can we work around that, versus an email that has bullet points that me saying no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, and even with an explanation, so, and then you can understand the other side's perspective. Well, the reason why we're asking for this is because of this. Oh, okay, then how about we modify this other section of the document, so you can engage in a dialogue that seems to be more sincere. But some people don't like to be put in the spotlight like that. They like to be able to, put the phone on mute, and yeah, so I also understand that too.
Yeah. So in an upcoming episode of the Anything But Typical podcast, and I'm not trying to just plug this, I'm really not, but I love the stories that we get to hear from entrepreneurs. And we've got one coming up with Mike Reimels, a dentist. He's a client. And he talks about, like, one of the things that I learned from this that I thought was really appropriate, and it ties back to this whole last 2 years. He goes, because he spends a lot of time with his family, and yet he is running this massive organization. I mean, it's massive. And he does a lot of acquisitions. And he says, I don't spend time in traffic anymore. It's interesting. He's very disciplined. He's, physically fit and all that kind of stuff. But he prioritizes his family. But think about the amount of time that we don't have to spend in traffic. And we're in the process of trying to figure it out and keep our culture at BGW and make sure that we're in the office a couple of days a week so that we can pick each other up, out of a lineup and, like, oh yeah, that's Adam. But the amount of time in traffic, what do you do? And, there are, to your point, technology things that you can do. Distracted driving is a big thing. We got to be very careful about that. But you can do, with a lot of technology that's in a lot of vehicles now, you can do voice recognition texts. You don't have to take your eyes off off the windshield and see what's ahead of you, and you can have it transcribe, and yeah, it'll misspell stuff and whatever, and that's okay, as long as people know this is what's going on. But it's amazing some of the things that you can do. So I just, that was one of the things that I picked up from Mike Reimels. I'm like, man, that is some really good wisdom.
Here's the evil of technology. Okay. Remember back in the day when you could go home and there was no way to do work unless you brought it in your briefcase. You don't have a fax machine at your house. You don't have any electronic means of communication where it's very rudimentary. And you're like, okay, I'll spend more time listening to the dial-up function and connect. And then you're on a monochrome screen and you're like, okay, this is just not working well. Then this magical device appeared. It was called a BlackBerry. Okay. I probably mentioned this probably last year at some point in talking about technology, which is that there was an article in the Wall Street Journal about how to manage your clients in a ever-changing technological world. And at that point, it was the BlackBerry was the thing. And it was so true then, and it's true now, which is that you have to, your client as a service provider for us and for you guys at BGW, that it's become an expectation of clients that your response time is quicker than it was even, only a few years ago because of technology. And so that you have to manage your clients' expectations. And if you are one that responds at 11 o'clock every night, no matter what, even on weekends, that doesn't become, I shouldn't say a privilege, it becomes the norm and becomes an expectation. And then when you don't do it, then there's a problem. And so and it's easier for us when you're older and you're a partner to make certain decisions as to how you're going to be responsive versus a younger person who is, the expectations are, yeah, you're going to be responsive. And so we have to remind our younger people that, you have to work hard, but within reason. We understand you have families. A lot of them have young families. And so, we don't want to take that away from them. But so it is that to me is the evil side of evolving technology, which is that it's so quick to respond. So why wouldn't you in a car respond to a text or an email because you push a button on your steering wheel and you can talk, and then answer the email at 6:30 at night on your way home from work, kind of thing. So that's I think the downside of it, that is manageable, but you have to manage it because you might inadvertently be mismanaging client expectations if you are being that responsive, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Adam, you are unusually quiet today.
You guys are doing great. I got nothing. I agree.
His iPhone works perfectly, and that's all that's all that
That's
matters,
right.
right?
Yeah, I've been happy with the technology changes, making it happen.
Well, another interesting phenomena too is, I'm gonna lower my voice a little bit, but the older guys in my shop, who were naysayers, who said, "I working from home, no way. I need to be in the office and be next to my assistant and be next to this and that." And then because they were forced to not be in the office for a period of time, and they resisted. They wanted to be in the office, and we're like, you really shouldn't be. Now they love it. They're like, oh my gosh, I can sit on my couch and have a cup of coffee or two or three and have access and send stuff. And then there's this we use Genius Scan, which basically uses your camera to take a picture and turns it into a PDF, and I push a button and my handwritten markups go to my assistant like instantaneously. Once that you get that embraced, so it's just been an interesting phenomena to see some of the older folks in my shop really embrace that when they were really naysayers at the beginning of the pandemic.
So that's a great thing that you just raised. Like, what are some cool apps or things that you found and discovered over the last couple of years that are worth sharing? Like, I learned so much from my 30-year-old kids. Like, I love these apps. I do all of our imagery and stuff like that on my phone with a couple different apps. I use Snapseed for compiling a bunch of photos together, and I use Unsplash, which has some of the best. If I'm not taking my own photos, I go to Unsplash. They've got great stuff there. I mean, it's just amazing. And as a former graphic designer, where we were using, Photoshop and we were using Adobe Illustrator and all that, like, I can do this on my phone with my fingers. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I was talking
Genius
to one of the
Scan. Okay, cool. I was not aware of that. I just wrote it down. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, the one that we use. I've been using to when I at home mark stuff up and I take a picture, and then you can send it immediately, and pretty good resolution. So because I write really poorly, when I remember, I write legibly, but then about page 3 or 4, you just kind of forget, and you're like, okay. Which is why only a few people in this office can really read my writing, which is why I dictate my timesheets down instead of write them down. There's just the whole history behind that. So Genius Scan, there is, and I'm just kind of thumbing through other apps that I have on here. So some of them are, I would say, proprietary, but link into our systems. And so that's the other key too, is that if you want the integration, you need to make sure that it works with, whether it's Microsoft Exchange, et cetera, and that it can get through the firewalls. you have to have, because my phone is fully authorized on our system, which basically means I had to give it up. Big Brother is on my phone, and I'm fine with that. They said either we put Big Brother on your phone or you get a separate phone. What do you want to do? I'm like, okay, I will let you have. I'm not doing anything nefarious on my phone. I like that word. That word is in my mind now, Gary. And I think about Dr. Nefarious from Groove. Yeah. You think about that all day. So, but yeah, it's the technology and the voice recognition. So we have actually, it's part of our dictation system, and the next generation of that is going to be kind of like the Dragon program that does the dictation and recognize it and learns and particular words, which is good if you're in a particular industry. So if you're in the construction industry or legal or accounting, and there's certain terms of art, it will learn those kind of things. And they actually have modules that you can put on top of based on your industry that gives you kind of an advantage of using certain nomenclature for certain things, and it will recognize that that's what you're saying rather than saying something else. So whole bunch of stuff out there to play with. But I will say also that, anytime you use an app, you're using someone else's stuff, usually accessing their database and they're accessing yours. So I have friends who were late to embrace technology because they were just afraid they were always being watched. But, I don't want to get into a paranoia or, conspiracy theory, but I tell my kids and myself all the time that we're always being listened to and watched. And I proved to them, I said, stand on this corner and look around. Tell me how many cameras do you see pointing at you? And they identified, the obvious ones. I said, there's an ATM over there. There's an ATM over there. There's this, there's that. And I'm like, oh, okay. The other day I was talking, I didn't do anything. And then Siri on my watch asked me, is like, can you say that again? I'm like, I didn't. So obviously it's listening. So again,
Wow.
some of the evils of technology. And I just think that, my suggestion to all of you is you just concede that you're always being watched and always being listened to, even when this phone is sitting on your nightstand at midnight, that it's listening. So.
Well, you make a good point, because everything is being recorded. So every tweet, I got off Twitter a long time ago, because every time I was on the train in Cleveland, when we had to debark in whatever, get off the train because the train was on fire, the brakes were on fire. This happened multiple times, and it was always in the the thick of minus whatever it was, with snow on the ground, and walking in the dark in not the best places in Cleveland. And I would see these signs, one of the best, voted one of the top 3 or whatever public transportation systems in the country. And I'm like, what about, yeah, it wasn't bringing out the best in me, so I got rid of it. but it does make the point, like, whatever we say out there, it could come back and haunt you. So.
Yeah, and I'm not intending on running for public office, so it's all good too,
Oh man, there's a reason why most people don't want to run for public office. Adam, any technology hacks that you've used in the last 2 years that have changed things up for you? Oh, you're on mute.
The mic muted. No, not really. I mean, for me, I focus more on ways that I could be more disciplined that aren't really technology related. Because I found that wasn't really gonna, like, a really cool app like Todoist wasn't going to help me if I didn't actually set a discipline or a habit to actually use Todoist. So I focus more on what kind of a routine will help me to maximize my utility and productivity. And I'm not there yet. I think I got it pretty well figured out on the personal side, but I still struggle a little bit at work because, day happens and stuff happens to you, so I'll get there though. But once I'm there, then I use the technology.
You've done a very good job in the last 2 years, man. I'm just like blown away by your productivity, your engagement, and I'm not just blowing smoke. I'm dead serious about it. It's been really amazing. You don't have to share this, but I'm gonna throw it like you've gotten really in shape. You've gotten really disciplined about your eating and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't even know how many pounds you've lost, but you've lost a lot.
Yeah, I was about to look it up for you. Stand by. I'll get you the answer. From pre-pandemic for the people that are interested in knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
on March, in March of 2020, I weighed 225 pounds and I weighed 185 this morning. So whatever that math is.
wow,
Yeah.
That's amazing.
that's amazing.
That's so cool.
No, but I mean, that really comes down to that was the discipline that I figured out how to get in my personal life that I'm trying to apply to the work life too.
No, that's good, man.
That is, you talk to trainers, and that is the difficulty. There's two challenges that they will tell you, I believe. One is the discipline of having a balanced life. All of us are looking for that work-life balance, but it's deeper than that. It is, and for me, it is, I get focused on work and they don't exercise as much, or I get focused on something else, and then so you let one thing go. But when you let your fitness go, getting back into it is the problem, which is you feel like, okay, you're going to be embarrassed at the gym because you can't perform like you used to. And the people that you used to perform with are there and they're going to judge you, which is not true. And then it's the mental psychology of you not wanting to fail and being scared that, okay, what if I can't lift that size weight anymore, and having to go back down. And so, the trainers that you talk to, that you got to get past that psychology. And I'm so glad you did, because that's things that weigh us down, and we use excuses. We're like, well, I have to work, so I'm not going to go work out, kind of thing, so that's awesome.
Thanks, man.
It's progress, not perfection.
That's right. I mean, mathematically, that's actually not that much every week. So there were temptations to say, nothing's working, I'm done. But when you add it up over time, it all adds up.
So Tim gives you a big shout out.
I appreciate
it. Way to go, Adam. That's cool.
Yeah, so that was a piece of technology. I use Fitbit.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I was freaking out 2 days ago. I woke up and my watch, which measures my sleep and my breathing, my heart rate, it like REM, deep sleep, all of that. It's unbelievable. But for some reason it had drained down to 5%. And so I'm like, oh no, what do I do?
I can't function today. I might as well just
uh-oh. And it says that I didn't sleep that night. So I'm like, oh no.
There you go.
I know I did. So anyway, well, any parting thoughts, words of wisdom, things you want to remember, people you want to shout out to before we head into a long weekend? By the way, have a safe trip, Adam, wherever you're going.
No, I think just everybody be safe.
You mentioned Crazy Shirts, and several months ago, they were very generous to the three of us and said, hey, pick out whatever shirt you wanted. And I think we were supposed to pick out a crazy looking shirt, and I was on that path to do that. And then I found this one that I had to have, and it's if you can see, well, I'm gonna try to get it. Yeah. Okay. So, land of the free, home of the brave, and then there's a bigger one of those on the back. So very much a, I love wearing this because it's, and I have, my American flag shirt that I wear and stuff, but this is more subtle. And I think it means more to people when they see it. So, and I kind of tested it, and I just kind of randomly wore it and to my parents' house, and my dad noticed it, so it's like kind of like, okay, obviously you would have noticed the American flag one, but this one you kind of like, okay, because it kind of looks like any other, it kind of looks like a brewery shirt, that you would get at, they use the servers use kind of thing. So, but thank you to them for that, and I'll wear that shirt very proudly a lot, which is why it's faded.
I love it. Well, they use natural dyes too. Like the one I got was dyed with mangoes and pineapple, right?
Okay.
I mean, that's pretty cool. So that was probably dyed with pomegranate, or something. Yeah, it's been cool to see the different companies that have kind of come onto this, as well as that's why I love serving privately held businesses, man. I was in Ozen Air Technology headquarters here in Charlotte, out by the airport, and they do air compressors for like pneumatic lines and stuff like that in manufacturing facilities. Like, seeing that is so cool. It's just neat. So anyway, it's a blessing to serve you all. We'll put this thing up on BGW CPA YouTube channel later on today. Everyone have a safe and good Memorial Day weekend with your loved ones. And we'll be back, Lord willing, next week. And so you guys be safe. Thanks again for taking time out of your day to join us.
All right.
We
See you
appreciate
guys.
you. See y'all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.